While I was helping pay the rent, my daughter-in-law called me a useless old woman in the family group chat, forgetting I was in it. So I stopped sending money. Let's see who's useless now. Subscribe for more life-changing stories and leave your thoughts in the comments. My hands trembled as I transferred $800 to Ryan's account, nearly half my substitute teacher's salary for the month. The confirmation dinged, and I stared at my bank balance, $912.63 to last until next month. I winced as I shifted my weight off my injured knee, still throbbing from my fall on the school steps 2 hours earlier. Not a single person had stopped to help. At least they'll have a good Thanksgiving, I whispered, counting out coins for the bus ride home. Rain pelted against my umbrella as I limped up the stairs to my modest apartment, the one I'd managed to keep after John died 5 years ago. Inside, I hung my damp coat and immediately began preparing the turkey. 16 hours of cooking lay ahead, but I didn't mind. After 3 years of cancellations, my son and his family were finally coming for Thanksgiving dinner. I moved methodically through my tiny kitchen, chopping onions for stuffing, peeling potatoes, and preparing John's special cranberry sauce recipe. Every few minutes I checked my phone, half expecting the cancellation that haunted me. By midnight, the pies were cooling, and everything was ready for tomorrow's feast. The next morning, I was up at 5, sliding the 20-pound turkey into the oven. I hummed as I set the table with my best china, chipped in places but still elegant. I even bought sparkling cider for my teenage grandchildren, Emma and Tom, whom I barely knew anymore. At 4:30 p.m., with the turkey golden and the house filled with aromas of sage and cinnamon, my phone rang. Ryan's name flashed on the screen. "Mom?" His voice carried that familiar tone, the one that preceded disappointment. My stomach clenched. "You're not coming." Something came up. A really important networking opportunity with Vanessa's colleagues. "I see." My voice sounded hollow, even to my own ears. "We'll reschedule, I promise." In the background, I heard Vanessa's voice, slightly muffled but clear enough. "Tell her we have an important commitment, honey. She'll understand." She always does. Then came the unmistakable sound of laughter. "I'm sorry, Mom. You get it, right? This could really help my career." "Of course," I said automatically. "I understand." After hanging up, I stood motionless in my festive dress, surrounded by a feast prepared for ghosts. Methodically, I began wrapping each dish in foil. The food would last me weeks. As I stored the untouched pumpkin pie, my phone chimed with a notification. With numb fingers, I opened the app to find photos posted by Paul, my former colleague. Best Thanksgiving ever. The images showed Ryan, Vanessa, Emma, and Tom, all smiling broadly at an elegant dinner party in someone's mansion. They wore formal attire, champagne flutes raised in celebration. I zoomed in on Vanessa's neck. A new diamond pendant gleamed there, probably worth 3 times what I sent them monthly. My vision blurred as I noticed Ryan's expensive watch, the one I'd never seen before. For this dinner, I'd been deemed unworthy to attend. I'd transferred money I couldn't spare, money that meant working weekends, cleaning houses in addition to my teaching jobs. At 58, my body protested these extra hours with aches that kept me awake at night. I lowered myself onto a kitchen chair, surrounded by food no one would eat, in an apartment no one wanted to visit. The realization crashed down like a physical weight. I wasn't just lonely. I was being used. The tears came silently as I stared at those gleaming faces on my phone screen, wondering when exactly I had become invisible. Christmas brought a minor miracle. Ryan agreed to bring his family to my home. I spent 3 days decorating, hanging the ornaments John and I had collected over decades, baking Ryan's favorite cookies, and wrapping modest gifts I could ill afford. When the doorbell finally rang, my heart raced with anticipation. They were actually here. "Grandma," Emma said with practiced politeness as she air-kissed my cheek. At 16, she was almost a stranger to me now, her eyes immediately returning to her phone. 14-year-old Tom mumbled, "Hey," without looking up from his device. Neither reached for the gifts I'd placed under the tree. "Mother," Ryan nodded, handing me a generic gift bag from the drugstore. The tag read simply, "Mom," in Vanessa's handwriting. "The place smells interesting," Vanessa said, wrinkling her nose as she stepped inside. "Is that mothballs?" "Just potpourri," I replied softly, closing the door against the cold. "I made your favorite casserole, Ryan." "We already ate," Vanessa interjected. "I told Ryan we should call first, but you know men." She laughed sharply, glancing around my apartment with thinly veiled disdain. Throughout dinner, which only I ate while they picked at dessert, Vanessa interrupted me constantly. When I began a story about my teaching days, she cut in, "Kids learn so differently now. Those old methods are completely outdated." I noticed Ryan's silence, his complete deference to her every opinion. When had my confident, outspoken son become this quiet shadow? "Emma mentioned she's struggling with algebra," I ventured. "I could help. I tutored math for years." Vanessa rolled her eyes dramatically. "No offense, Martha, but those antiquated techniques won't work with today's curriculum. We've hired an online tutor. Very expensive, but the best." I nodded, swallowing the retort that rose in my throat. The same antiquated techniques that had helped dozens of struggling students succeed. The evening crawled by, punctuated by Vanessa's sighs whenever I spoke, and the constant tapping of my grandchildren's fingers on their phones. Ryan checked his watch every few minutes as if enduring a tedious obligation. As they prepared to leave, barely an hour and a half after arriving, Ryan pulled me aside in the kitchen. "Mom, we're in a tight spot financially," he whispered, glancing toward the living room where Vanessa was putting on her designer coat. "The economy's rough right now." His eyes couldn't meet mine. "Would it be possible to increase your monthly help to $200? Just temporarily?" The request knocked the wind from me. I was already working 3 jobs, skipping meals, cutting my blood pressure medication in half to make it last longer. "Things are really that bad?" I asked, searching his face. "Worse," he said grimly. "We might lose the apartment." I thought of my grandchildren without a home, of Ryan's desperation. Despite the evening's coldness, despite the growing certainty that something wasn't right, I nodded. "I'll make it work." Relief flooded his face. He squeezed my shoulder, the closest thing to affection I'd received all night. "You're the best, Mom. We'll pay you back someday." As they drove away, I stood in my doorway watching their expensive SUV disappear. To send $200 monthly, I'd need to take on weekend house cleaning jobs in addition to my weekday tutoring and substitute teaching. At 58, my knees already screamed in protest. I closed the door on the cold night air, surrounded by half-eaten desserts and unopened gifts. The truth settled over me like a shroud. I wasn't family to them anymore. I was an ATM with a pulse. February 12th, my birthday. 59 years old today. I'd baked myself a small chocolate cake, John's recipe, the one he'd made for me every year during our 30-year marriage. One candle stood in the center, its flame dancing in the dim light of my kitchen. My phone remained silent all day. No calls, no messages. I'd checked my mailbox 3 times, hoping for a card. Nothing. "Happy birthday to me," I whispered, cutting a slice of cake I couldn't bring myself to eat. On the counter sat the old iPhone Ryan had given me for emergencies. I rarely used it except to check the family WhatsApp group he'd created supposedly to share photos of the kids. I hadn't posted anything there in months, but occasionally scrolled through to glimpse my grandchildren's lives I was no longer part of. Tonight, loneliness pushed me to pick it up. Perhaps someone had remembered after all. The group showed several new messages. The most recent photos showed Emma and Tom at an expensive amusement park, the kind that costs hundreds per ticket. I zoomed in on their smiling faces, touching the screen as if I could reach through it. Suddenly, the typing indicator appeared. Vanessa was online. My heart skipped. Maybe a belated birthday wish? Her message popped up. "Just lied to the useless old lady that we can't see her this weekend because Tom is sick. Actually, we're going to Aspen, but she sent $1,000 extra to help with medicine, LMAO. That covers our resort stay. Honestly, can't stand her smelly apartment and repetitive stories anymore. At least the old fool's money pays our rent and extras. LOL. Better she keeps thinking we're broke so she keeps financing our lifestyle." The idiot believes everything. Multiple laughing emojis followed. My hands shook violently. I waited, praying Ryan would defend me. Instead, his reply appeared. "Ha ha ha, I know, right? Don't be too harsh, babe. She's annoying with all that neediness, but we need her for now. Once we finally sell Dad's vacation house, the one she doesn't know exists, we can drop this charade. Until then, we put up with the occasional weepy calls. Small price for $800 monthly tax-free." Another user, Jessica R., Vanessa's work, responded, "You guys are evil, but I admire the strategy. Milk the old cow while she still produces." The phone slipped from my fingers. clattering on the table. My chest constricted so tightly, I couldn't breathe. I reread the messages, desperately searching for another interpretation. There was none. My son, my only child, was mocking me while deliberately extracting money he didn't need. Worse, he'd hidden property from me, property that likely came from John's estate. The single candle on my cake flickered, casting grotesque shadows across my kitchen. In its wavering light, I saw the truth of the past 5 years. Every canceled dinner, every eye roll, every rushed visit. It wasn't just indifference, it was calculated contempt. I'd been sending nearly half my income to people who laughed at my sacrifice, working multiple jobs, skipping meals, postponing medical care, all while they vacationed in Aspen and purchased jewelry. The most brutal revelation wasn't the financial deception. It was knowing my son, the baby I'd nursed, the boy I'd raised alone after John died, saw me as nothing more than a resource to exploit, a useless old lady, a cow to be milked. The candle guttered out, plunging the kitchen into darkness. In that moment, something inside me died too, something trusting and maternal that had survived decades of disappointment. What remained was something colder, something with unexpected strength. 2 weeks passed after discovering those messages. 2 weeks of going through motions, teaching, cleaning houses on weekends, transferring money to Ryan, all while a storm raged inside me. I couldn't eat, couldn't sleep. My body moved through the world like an empty shell. When Dr. Wilson's nurse called about my routine blood pressure check, I almost canceled. What was the point? But some lingering sense of self-preservation made me keep the appointment. Your blood pressure is dangerously high, Martha. Dr. Wilson frowned at the reading. 189/110. This puts you at risk for a stroke. I nodded absently, barely hearing him. Martha, his firm tone cut through my fog. Something's wrong beyond your numbers. I've been your doctor for 20 years. Talk to me. Maybe it was his kind eyes, so unlike Ryan's evasive gaze. Maybe it was simply having no one else to tell. Whatever the reason, the dam broke. I told him everything. The messages, the exploitation, the years of sacrifice while they secretly prospered. When I finished, he sat silently, hands steepled under his chin. Finally, he sighed deeply. Martha, what I'm about to share borders on unprofessional, but I'm concerned for your well-being. He hesitated. You know my wife, Caroline? I nodded. I'd met her at hospital fundraisers years ago. She works at First National, same department as Vanessa. My pulse quickened. Caroline mentioned that Vanessa constantly brags about her promotions and bonuses. According to office gossip, she's making well over $120,000 a year now. The room tilted slightly. That can't be right. There's more, he continued reluctantly. At the bank's Christmas party, someone congratulated Ryan on his position at his brother-in-law's brokerage firm. Caroline remembers because Vanessa boasted he'd been there for 8 months. 8 months. The same 8 months I'd been sending extra money for their financial emergency. Martha, are you all right? You've gone pale. My hands gripped the examination table so hard, my knuckles turned white. You're absolutely certain about this? Caroline doesn't gossip idly, he confirmed. Martha, how much have you been sending them? Almost everything, I whispered. I've been cleaning houses on weekends just to make rent. I've been cutting my pills in half. His expression darkened. While they've been lying to you. While they've been lying to me, I echoed, the words like broken glass in my mouth. Dr. Wilson wrote a prescription with unusual force, his pen nearly tearing the paper. This is for your blood pressure. Take it as directed. No more cutting pills. And Martha, he looked at me intently, I'm giving you another prescription, not written here. Stop sending them money, immediately. As I rose to leave, he added, Caroline also mentioned Vanessa's shopping habits. Last week she bought a $3,000 purse on her lunch break. I froze in the doorway, remembering how I'd fallen last month and couldn't afford a $30 cab to the emergency room. How I'd bandaged my own sprained wrist while my daughter-in-law carried a purse that cost 100 times that amount. One more thing, Dr. Wilson said. Your son was never unemployed, was he? No, I replied, certainty crystallizing into something hard and cold inside me. It appears he wasn't. Driving home, my mind replayed conversations from the past 5 years, reinterpreting every interaction through this new lens of truth, the casual cruelty, the constant excuses, the increasing demands paired with decreasing affection. By the time I parked at my apartment building, something had changed. The shock and hurt remained, but alongside them grew something unfamiliar, something with teeth. I wasn't just angry. I was awakening. That night after seeing Dr. Wilson, sleep evaded me. I paced my small apartment, his revelations echoing in my mind. For 5 years, I'd made myself smaller, working multiple jobs, skipping meals, rationing medicine, while my son and his wife lived in luxury. At 3 a.m., I flipped on my bathroom light and truly looked at myself for the first time in years. The woman in the mirror was a stranger, hair gray and untended, dark circles beneath dull eyes, shoulders permanently curved from years of invisible weight. "Who are you?" I whispered to my reflection. This woman had allowed herself to be diminished, exploited, and discarded. She had believed she deserved it. She had accepted crumbs of affection in exchange for her dignity. "Enough," I told the mirror firmly. "This ends now." My hands stopped shaking. My voice lost its tremor. In that moment, Martha Sullivan began to return from the dead. I wouldn't confront them immediately. That would only trigger more lies, more manipulation. Instead, I would reclaim my power silently, one piece at a time. Morning brought clarity and purpose. First, I canceled the automatic monthly transfer to Ryan's account without explanation. Next, I visited my bank and spoke with the manager about securing my accounts. "I'd like to revoke all access permissions," I explained, "and check if there have been any unauthorized inquiries recently." The manager tapped at his keyboard. "Actually, yes. Your son attempted to access your balance information last week, but our system required additional authentication." Another piece of the puzzle clicked into place. Ryan had been monitoring my accounts, calculating exactly how much he could extract. At home, I left the family WhatsApp group without explanation and temporarily blocked Ryan and Vanessa's numbers. Their reaction would come soon enough. I stared at my phone contacts, scrolling to a name I hadn't called in years. Diana Levinson, my closest friend before Ryan had subtly suggested she was a bad influence who took advantage of me. My finger hovered over the call button, then pressed decisively. "Martha?" Diana's voice was surprised but warm. "My God, it's been forever. I thought you'd moved away or something." "No," I replied, surprised by the steadiness in my voice. "I just got lost for a while, but I'm finding my way back." That afternoon, I visited the public library and enrolled in a free financial literacy course. On my way out, I picked up a pamphlet about legal rights for older adults. The day before Ryan's birthday, I sent only a simple card. No check, no emotional message, none of the usual extra money. The response was immediate. My phone began ringing incessantly. Ryan, then Vanessa, then numbers I didn't recognize, likely trying to reach me from different phones after realizing they'd been blocked. I let them all go to voicemail while I revised my resume for a position at a private school that paid substantially better than my substitute teaching jobs. When my doorbell rang repeatedly that evening, I didn't flinch. Through the peephole, I saw Ryan standing there, clearly agitated. I took a deep breath, straightened my shoulders, and opened the door. His face registered shock, whether at my calm demeanor or that I'd answered at all. I couldn't tell. "Mom," he began, his voice artificially concerned. "Is everything okay? We've been worried sick." I allowed myself one small smile. "Hello, Ryan. We need to talk about your job at your brother-in-law's brokerage firm, the one you've had for 8 months now." The color drained from his face. My invisibility had ended. 3 weeks after I stopped sending money, Ryan appeared at my door again. This time, his carefully crafted mask of concern had vanished entirely. "What the hell is going on, Mom?" he demanded, pushing past me into the apartment without waiting for an invitation. "The money didn't come through this month. We have bills to pay." I closed the door quietly, observing him like a scientist might observe a specimen. My son, my only child, paced my living room like a stranger, his expensive watch catching the light as he gestured angrily. "I've been calling and texting for weeks. We're about to miss our rent payment. Emma needs money for her school trip, and Tom's orthodontist appointment is next week." I noticed he didn't ask if I was ill or injured, the only question a loving son might ask after his mother suddenly disappeared from contact. "I've had some financial difficulties," I said calmly, settling into my armchair. I'd purchased it at a thrift store last week, my first non-essential expenditure in years. "I need to focus on my own expenses for now." Ryan's eyes narrowed. Financial difficulties? What does that even mean? You've always managed before. Things change. Mom, this isn't like you. We're family. We depend on that money. I studied him. This man I'd raised, this stranger who'd bled me dry while mocking me behind my back. In his eyes, I saw not concern, but calculation. How is your job going? I asked pleasantly. What job? You know I've only had temporary work since the layoff. I smiled slightly. I meant your position at Bennett & Associates, your brother-in-law's brokerage firm. You've been there 8 months now, isn't that right? Ryan froze mid-step. The color drained from his face so rapidly I almost felt concerned. Who told you that? He whispered. Does it matter? What matters is that you've been lying to me. For years, he recovered quickly, anger replacing shock. You've been spying on me? Having me investigated? That's insane, Mom. I remained unmoved. Is it insane to wonder why my son needs financial support while maintaining 2 properties and taking ski vacations? His mouth opened, then closed. For once, Ryan Sullivan had no ready lie. Or why my daughter-in-law wears a new diamond pendant while telling me you can't afford groceries. You don't understand. I understand perfectly, I interrupted, my voice steady. I understand that I've been played for a fool. The question is, what happens now? Ryan's expression shifted to something I recognized from his childhood, the look when he'd been caught in a serious transgression, a mixture of fear and calculation. Mom, there's been a misunderstanding. Yes, I got a job recently, but our finances are still recovering from the years of unemployment. We genuinely need help. I stood up, surprising myself with how steady I felt. Ryan, I believe we've said everything necessary for today. I think you should leave. You're abandoning your family when we need you, he hissed, desperation making him ugly. After everything we've done for you, keeping you involved in our lives, visiting when we can. What you've done for me. My laugh sounded foreign to my ears. Get out, Ryan. We'll discuss this when you're ready to tell the truth. I opened the door and waited. For a moment, I thought he might refuse, might continue this futile performance. Instead, he stalked past me, pausing at the threshold. You'll regret this, he warned. You need us more than we need you. I closed the door behind him without reply, leaning against it as his footsteps receded down the hallway. For the first time in years, I felt something extraordinary. I felt powerful. The confrontation with Ryan left me shaken, but resolute. I needed to know exactly what I was dealing with. I'd glimpsed the tip of an iceberg, but intuition told me the deception ran deeper. I found Bradley Cooper through an ad in the community paper. Retired PI. Affordable rates. He was a grandfatherly man, with shrewd eyes and a gentle manner. I'm not looking for revenge, I explained during our first meeting at a diner near my apartment. I need to understand the full extent of the lies before I can move forward. Bradley nodded. I understand, Mrs. Sullivan. You need closure. 2 weeks later, he called requesting an urgent meeting. We met at a quiet coffee shop downtown. The moment I saw his face, I knew he'd found something significant. Mrs. Sullivan, he began, unusually somber. You might want to brace yourself. He slid a manila folder across the table. My fingers trembled as I opened it, revealing photos of a luxurious waterfront property, bank statements, legal documents. Is this the vacation house Ryan mentioned in the messages? I asked, examining a photo of an elegant colonial-style home with a private dock. No, Bradley pointed to the deed date. This property was purchased 3 months after your husband's death. The source of funds is what you need to see. I turned the page and found a copy of an insurance document. My breath caught as I read, John Sullivan Life Insurance Policy, $750,000. My husband never mentioned such a large policy, I whispered. According to the beneficiary information, it was split evenly, 50% to you, 50% to your son. Did you receive your portion? $375,000? I shook my head, feeling suddenly lightheaded. No, nothing. Bradley's expression darkened as he showed me another document, a power of attorney I'd signed while battling severe pneumonia shortly after John's death. Ryan used this to redirect your entire portion into accounts he controlled. He later forged your signature on several transfers. Bradley hesitated. Mrs. Sullivan, this constitutes criminal fraud. My hands shook violently as I examined the documents. The room seemed to tilt sideways. There's more, Bradley continued gently. The apartment they claim to rent? They own it outright, purchased with some of your insurance money. There was never any rent to pay. Each revelation hit like a physical blow. Vanessa hadn't just received promotions. She'd inherited substantially from her grandmother 2 years earlier. Ryan managed significant investments. Their temporary jobs were elaborate fictions. They've been extracting money from you while living in luxury, Bradley concluded. And I found evidence they're planning to sell your apartment. The property was transferred to Ryan's name through documents manipulated by his friend Joseph Miller, an attorney who handled your husband's estate. The coffee shop faded around me as the brutal truth crystallized. For 5 years, I'd lived in self-imposed poverty, working multiple jobs, skipping meals, rationing medicine, while my son lived lavishly on money that legally belonged to me. Mrs. Sullivan, are you all right? I raised my eyes from the devastating evidence before me. Something had changed in me, something fundamental and irreversible. I'm better than I've been in years, Mr. Cooper, I said, surprised by the steadiness in my voice. For the first time, I'm seeing clearly. What will you do now? He asked quietly. I closed the folder with newfound determination. Whatever is necessary to reclaim what's mine. The invisible woman was becoming visible, and she was furious. Armed with Bradley Cooper's evidence, I sought legal counsel. Douglas Freeman, a silver-haired attorney specializing in elder financial abuse, reviewed my documents with growing indignation. Mrs. Sullivan, you have a rock-solid case for fraud and misappropriation, he stated firmly. Your son could face significant criminal penalties. The word criminal made my heart constrict. Despite everything, the thought of Ryan in prison troubled me deeply. Is there another option? I asked quietly. Douglas leaned forward. We could pursue civil remedies first. Demand full restitution, transfer of properties, legal fees. It would give him a chance to avoid criminal charges. I nodded, relieved. That's where I want to start. He may not cooperate, Douglas warned. People who commit this kind of betrayal rarely accept responsibility easily. Then we escalate, I replied, surprising myself with my resolve. But I want to try this way first. Over the next weeks, I methodically built my case. Douglas helped me document every transfer I'd made to Ryan over 5 years, nearly $50,000 from my meager income. We gathered bank records, text message histories, forged documents, and Bradley's findings about the hidden properties and insurance money. Meanwhile, Ryan and Vanessa intensified their attempts to contact me. Their messages evolved from concerned to desperate to threatening. Mom, please call us. We're worried about you. Ryan. Martha, if you're upset about something, we should talk. Vanessa. Mom, our electricity is about to be shut off. The kids are suffering. Ryan. This silent treatment is incredibly immature. Martha. Vanessa. If you don't respond, we'll need to call the police for a wellness check. Ryan. I maintained radio silence, responding only with brief text messages. I'm fine, just going through some personal matters, or need some space right now. Each message fueled their frustration, proof they cared more about the money than my well-being. During this time, I made other changes. I accepted the private school teaching position, increasing my income by 40%. I joined a community center exercise class, slowly rebuilding my physical strength. I reconnected with old friends Ryan had subtly separated me from years ago. Most importantly, I began seeing a therapist, Dr. Levine, who specialized in family trauma. What you're experiencing is a profound betrayal, she explained during our second session. It's natural to feel grief, rage, and confusion simultaneously. The strange thing is, I confessed, alongside the pain, I feel something else, something almost like liberation. She nodded. For years you've been controlled by their narratives and needs. Now you're reclaiming your autonomy. Meanwhile, Douglas prepared legal documents formally demanding restitution of all misappropriated funds, transfer of properties purchased with my insurance money, and additional compensation for emotional damages. When should we serve them? I asked during our final strategy meeting. The element of surprise works in our favor, he advised, but there's another approach we could consider. I'm listening. Rather than sending formal documents first, you could invite them to a meeting. Face-to-face confrontation can be powerful and might avoid a protracted legal battle. The thought of facing Ryan and Vanessa with the truth terrified and energized me simultaneously. After 5 years of invisibility, I would make them see me. I composed a brief text. I'd like you all to come to dinner next Saturday at 6 p.m. I have some news to share. Ryan's response came instantly. We'll be there. So glad you're feeling better, Mom. In his eagerness to restore the flow of money, he didn't notice the shift in power. The predator had become the prey, and I was done being hunted. My apartment looked different the evening of the dinner. I'd rearranged furniture, added a few new pieces from thrift stores, hung artwork I'd kept in storage for years. Small changes, but meaningful. This space was truly mine again. I'd changed too. My hair, freshly cut in a modern style, framed a face that had regained color and purpose. My posture was straighter, my movements more deliberate. The invisible woman was vanishing, replaced by someone I was beginning to recognize. At precisely 6 p.m., the doorbell rang. I opened it to find Ryan, Vanessa, Emma, and Tom standing awkwardly in the hallway. Come in, I said pleasantly. Dinner's almost ready. Their response to my transformation was immediate. Ryan's eyes widened slightly, while Vanessa's narrowed with calculation. Mom, you look different, Ryan commented, scanning the apartment. Good different. Very refreshed, Vanessa added with practiced warmth. This new job must be treating you well. I simply smiled, directing them to the dining table I'd set with care. Throughout the meal, their behavior was fascinating to observe. Ryan complimented everything from the food to my apartment's cleanliness. Vanessa asked solicitous questions about my health and activities. Both exchanged frequent glances, trying to gauge when to broach the real purpose of their visit, the money. My grandchildren remained absorbed in their phones until I confiscated them gently but firmly. No devices at dinner tonight. We have important family matters to discuss. Ryan seized the opening. Speaking of family matters, Mom, you seem to be doing really well. That new job must be paying nicely. I'm exploring new opportunities, I replied enigmatically. Vanessa leaned forward. Where exactly are you working now? Martha, here and there, I said, serving dessert. Emma, Tom, would you help me bring coffee from the kitchen? In the kitchen, I showed them photos of themselves as young children. Remember when I used to take you to the zoo every month? You loved feeding the giraffes. Their expressions softened with genuine, if distant, memories. Why did you stop visiting us? Tom asked quietly. Did your parents say I stopped? I countered gently. Their confused expressions told me everything. Back at the table, I served coffee and then calmly placed a folder beside my plate. Before we continue, I want to record this conversation. I set my phone on the table, voice recorder running. For everyone's legal protection. Ryan's cup froze halfway to his lips. Legal protection? What are you talking about? I opened the folder, arranging its contents methodically. Bank statements showing my transfers to Ryan, copies of the forged insurance documents, photos of the Newport house and their rented apartment, and printouts of the WhatsApp messages. For 5 years, I began evenly. I believed my life had to be one of sacrifice to help my struggling son. I worked multiple jobs at nearly 60, skipped meals, rationed medicine, all to send whatever I could to you. I pressed play on my phone. Vanessa's voice filled the room. Sugar, the old cow, while she still produces milk, followed by Ryan's laughter. Meanwhile, I continued, indicating the documents, you were living in 2 properties, concealed $375,000 of my insurance money, and planned to take this apartment, which, I've discovered, legally belongs to me. I turned to my grandchildren, whose faces reflected genuine shock. Did your parents ever tell you I chose not to see you? Or have you also been part of this deception? Emma began crying silently. Now, I said, my voice steady despite my racing heart, I'd like to discuss how you plan to return the $642,753 that legally belongs to me. That legally, plus interest and emotional damages, of course. Ryan started to rise, but I cut him off. Your attorney has been notified, and mine is waiting for my call by 9 p.m. confirming I'm safe. If he doesn't hear from me, he'll file all criminal charges first thing tomorrow. The silence was broken only by Tom's fork clattering to the floor. The room froze in a tableau of exposed deceit. Ryan recovered first, his shock morphing into indignation. This is insane, he sputtered, pushing back from the table. You're taking things completely out of context. Vanessa's face hardened. Spying on us? Hiring investigators? Martha, I never thought you'd stoop so low. I remained perfectly still, allowing their denials to echo hollowly in the room. Then I simply pressed play on my phone again, letting Vanessa's voice fill the space. Sugar the old cow while she still produces milk. That's That was a joke, Vanessa protested, her composure cracking. You weren't supposed to see that? Exactly, I replied softly. I wasn't supposed to know how you really felt. Ryan switched tactics, his expression softening into the contrite look I'd seen countless times. Mom, we've made mistakes, yes, but you always had everything while we struggled to build a life. You lived comfortably in this apartment while you what? Ryan? I interrupted. Purchased a waterfront property with my insurance money? Took ski vacations while I cleaned houses on weekends to send you cash? Emma looked up, tears streaming down her face. Grandma, did you really work 3 jobs to send us money, while they said you were too busy to visit us? The genuine shock in her voice confirmed what I'd suspected. My grandchildren had been manipulated too. Yes, Emma, I answered gently. I worked myself to exhaustion, believing your father was unemployed and you were struggling. Tom's face reddened as he turned to his father. You said Grandma was selfish and didn't care about us. You said she had plenty of money but wouldn't help. Ryan's face drained of color. Vanessa jumped in, her voice honey-laced poison. Martha, clearly there's been a misunderstanding. We never intended— Please stop, I said, raising my hand. I have documentation of every transaction, every forged signature, every fraudulent transfer. The insurance company has already confirmed the policy was illegally redirected. Ryan stood abruptly, desperation in his eyes. You can't prove anything. It's your word against ours. My attorney advised me you'd say that. I slid another document across the table. That's why I petitioned for handwriting analysis on the forged documents. The results arrived yesterday. Ryan glanced at the paper, then away. Defeat began to register on his face. This doesn't have to become a legal nightmare, I continued. My attorney has prepared settlement terms that would allow you to avoid criminal charges. You'd sue your own son? Ryan's voice cracked. Your family? For the first time that evening, I allowed my emotion to show. You speak of family? When was I family to you, Ryan? When you mocked me in messages? When you hid my husband's insurance policy? When you worked me to exhaustion while you vacationed? I turned to my grandchildren, whose worldview was visibly crumbling. I never abandoned you. I was pushed away systematically while being used as a financial resource. Emma stood suddenly, moved around the table, and did something that hadn't happened in years. She hugged me. The simple human contact broke something inside me. I'm sorry, she whispered. I didn't know. As I embraced my granddaughter, I saw clearly what I'd been missing, not just the money or the truth, but the authentic connection that had been deliberately severed. Settlement papers will arrive tomorrow, I said over Emma's shoulder, looking directly at Ryan. Choose wisely. The weeks following the confrontation tore through the foundations of what remained of our family. My attorney, Douglas, filed the settlement papers as promised, giving Ryan and Vanessa 30 days to respond before we'd proceed with criminal charges. Their marriage began to fracture under the pressure of exposed lies. Vanessa moved out temporarily, calling me one evening in a fury I'd never heard before. This is all Ryan's idea, she hissed, words slurring slightly. The insurance money, the forged documents, I knew nothing about that. The WhatsApp messages suggest otherwise, I replied calmly. That was just venting. Everyone complains about their in-laws, she protested. But Ryan went behind my back with the big stuff. Did you know he's been gambling, or that he had an affair with my friend Jessica last year? I remained silent, recognizing her tactic, offering new betrayals to distract from her own culpability. I need you to tell your lawyer I wasn't involved, she continued desperately. My career would be destroyed if this became public. The bank has strict ethics policies. I'll consider your request, I said, hanging up without commitment. Meanwhile, Ryan alternated between pleading messages, Mom, please, we can work this out as a family, and thinly veiled threats. If you push this, none of us will ever speak to you again. The most surprising development came from my grandchildren. Emma called one afternoon, asking if she could visit. When I opened my door, both she and Tom stood in the hallway, looking lost. Can we talk to you, Grandma? Emma asked hesitantly. About everything? Over hot chocolate, they shared their side of the story, how they'd been gradually separated from me through elaborate excuses, how their parents had painted me as disinterested and selfish. Dad always said you were too busy for us, Tom explained. When we asked to visit, he'd say you had declined. And Mom said your apartment was unsafe because of your hoarding problem, Emma added. My what? I nearly choked on my drink. She said you had mental health issues and couldn't handle visitors. Emma continued. We believe them because, well, they're our parents. Their visits became regular, tentative bridges being rebuilt between us. With each conversation, I learned more about the toxic environment they'd been raised in, the constant focus on appearances, the casual dishonesty, the materialistic values. One evening, just days before the settlement deadline, Emma and Tom appeared at my door unexpectedly, faces streaked with tears. Everything's falling apart, Emma sobbed. Dad moved into a hotel. Mom's talking about relocating to Chicago. They're fighting constantly about money and blame. We're scared, Tom admitted, looking younger than his 15 years. Dad could go to jail, couldn't he? The question hung in the air, heavy with implications. Yes, Ryan could face prison time if I pursued the criminal charges, a reality I'd been avoiding confronting. What happens to us if he does? Emma whispered. I pulled them both into an embrace, feeling their bodies shake with fear. These children, innocent bystanders in a war of adult making, had already lost so much: their security, their trust, their family structure. That night, after they left, I sat alone in my kitchen, staring at the calendar marking the settlement deadline. In 3 days, I needed to instruct Douglas on how to proceed. The choice loomed before me: justice or mercy, restitution or relationship, legal victory or family healing. I'd spent months building a case that could reclaim what was stolen from me. But was I prepared to pay the emotional price of winning? The morning of the settlement deadline dawned with a gentle rain in Providence, the same weather as the day I'd fallen on those school steps months ago, invisible to everyone around me. Today, as I stepped from a taxi in front of Douglas Freeman's office, the driver insisted on holding an umbrella for me all the way to the entrance. Inside the conference room, tension hung thick in the air. Ryan sat hunched, looking years older than when this began. Vanessa maintained her composure despite her disheveled appearance. My grandchildren waited silently in a corner, alongside an elderly woman I didn't immediately recognize. This is my mother, Eleanor, Vanessa introduced reluctantly. She wanted to be here. The 82-year-old woman approached me, leaning on a cane. Mrs. Sullivan, I knew nothing of what my daughter was doing. When I found out, I insisted she come today and accept whatever terms you propose. I nodded, surprised by this unexpected ally, and signaled Douglas to begin. He presented the extensive document. Martha Sullivan has sufficient evidence to criminally prosecute Ryan Sullivan for fraud, forgery, and misappropriation of funds exceeding $600,000, elder financial abuse, and power of attorney abuse. Ryan's shoulders slumped further. Douglas continued. However, she is willing to forego criminal charges under the following non-negotiable conditions. The agreement was meticulous. Ryan would immediately sell the Newport house and transfer all proceeds to me. The rented apartment would be sold within 6 months, with 70% of the value coming to me. Ryan would additionally pay $2,000 monthly for 5 years. I would have regular visitation rights with my grandchildren, including 1 month each summer. There's also a behavior clause, Douglas added. Any attempt to disparage Martha to the grandchildren or community will result in immediate reinstatement of criminal proceedings. Ryan, facing the very real possibility of prison, signed without objection. Vanessa attempted to argue about the apartment sale, but a single look from her mother silenced her. Why are you doing this, Martha? Ryan finally asked, his voice hollow. You could send me to prison. You could completely ruin our lives. I studied my son, truly saw him, and recognized something I hadn't noticed before. Fear, not just of prosecution, but a deeper, older fear. I'm not doing this for you, I replied calmly. I'm doing it for my grandchildren and for myself. Spending years in courtrooms, reliving every betrayal, would keep me tethered to the past. I prefer to move forward, but on my terms. Turning to Emma and Tom, I added, and I do this because despite everything, I believe you deserve the chance to grow up understanding what family truly means. 6 months later, I settled into my new apartment overlooking the ocean in Newport, an irony not lost on me. With my recovered funds, I'd not only secured my financial future, but created a special space for Emma and Tom, who now spent every weekend with me. My phone rang, Caroline Wilson, inviting me to another meeting of the group I'd founded, Second Chances After 50, a program helping older women identify and combat financial and emotional abuse. Ryan, now working as a teaching assistant at a community school after losing his brokerage position, had begun therapy and was slowly rebuilding a relationship with me, a painful but necessary process for us both. Vanessa had disappeared after their divorce, moving to another state, but her mother Eleanor had surprisingly become my friend and ally. On a sunny afternoon, I helped Emma with her math homework on my balcony. The ocean view was spectacular. "Grandma," Emma asked, "do you regret not sending Dad to prison?" I considered her question carefully. Justice and revenge are different things, sweetheart. Sometimes true victory isn't in destroying those who hurt you, but in rebuilding something better from the ruins. I glanced at the newly framed photo on my wall. Emma, Tom, and me at my financial certification graduation. Beside it hung a plaque with the phrase that had become my mantra: "It's never too late to rediscover your worth." Thanks for listening. Don't forget to subscribe and feel free to share your story in the comments. Your voice matters.